Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Chief Choi, Mr. T. Fank, Madam Secretary, Mr. Inspector General, Mr. City Attorney, members of the public. Today is Tuesday, July 11th, 2023. It is 9:30 a.m. This is the regular meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioners Briggs, Southers, and Kalanche are present, and we have a quorum. Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We welcome everyone attending this morning. All public comment will be heard during item number 2 on the agenda. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. The order of the speakers will be a speaker in this room will go first, then we will take a speaker watching today's meeting on Zoom. We will alternate between speakers in the room and Zoom for a total of 45 minutes. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board, so you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinions shall be deemed off topic, and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in the public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in a number of ways outlined on the agenda. For those of you in this room, please submit a card to an officer, and he will provide that to the board secretary indicating you wish to speak during the meeting. If you're logged on during Zoom, please raise your virtual hand. For those of you in attendance today here in the boardroom, the department and key stakeholders meetings of the Board of Police Commissioners are open to the public. The state's Ralph Brown Act affords the public the opportunity to present at the meetings, hear the presentations and dialogue in real time, and provide feedback via public comment period. During these meetings, there is a need for the board to carry out the public business expeditiously without delays or disruptions. Members of the audience shall not engage in any conduct which causes an actual disruption of the meeting. Those attending are reminded that disruptive behavior will be cause for removal. If you disrupt this meeting, you will be provided with only 1 warning to cease disruptive behavior. If you fail to cease such behavior, you will be removed from the meeting. While in the boardroom, members of the audience must be seated. Standing is not permitted. In the past, standing has been permitted for a few, but moving forward, this courtesy will not be afforded attendees except for credentialed members of the press. All attendees must be seated. Failure to follow this rule will result in a warning and/or removal from the meeting. At this time, we're going to go to Chief Choi for the report of the Chief of Police. Good morning, Chief Choi.
Good morning, Commissioner President Briggs, Commissioner Southers and Kalanche, Inspector General Smith, City Attorney Song, and Mr. T. Fank. Today, as Chief Moore usually does, I'll be discussing significant events from last week, providing a crime update, and then also discussing our current personnel strength. So starting off with significant events. On Wednesday, July 12th, a retail theft summit was held in Los Angeles at the Iglesias Universal located at 625 South Bonnie Bray Street. The summit was coordinated by LAPD, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, as well as the California Highway Patrol. This was a collaboration in a response to a rise in organized retail theft in the region. The summit was attended by over 200 retailers, also along with the criminal justice personnel, to create a forum to network with retailers and really reestablish the Los Angeles Organized Crime Retail Crime Association, also known as La Orca. The topics discussed included engagement between law enforcement and retail security, asset protection, and enforcement operations. The speakers included Los Angeles Police Department's Chief Michael Moore, the City Attorney Heidi Feldstein Soto, Rampart and Topanga Commands also presented some scenarios, or I'm sorry, some casework. California Highway Patrol attended, and also the San Diego Organized Retail Crime Association. Target was present, as well as Warehouse Shoe Source. The event was well attended with a total of over 350 persons from LAPD, other law enforcement agencies, and retailers. This was a great event. It was highlighted as a public-private partnership in an effort to reduce retail theft in the region. And then on Thursday, moving on Thursday, July 13th, Valley Traffic Division, a motor officer was flagged down by a victim who just had his vehicle stolen. This victim directed the officer to the stolen vehicle. The motor officer approached the vehicle, at which point that vehicle fled. Officers proceeded to follow this vehicle. It went into a cul-de-sac, made a U-turn, and the suspect drove the vehicle directly at our motor officer, striking him. Our motor officer was ejected from his vehicle, and then the suspect vehicle fled. Responding units quickly located the vehicle, apprehended the occupants after it collided with another civilian vehicle at the termination of a brief pursuit. The driver was a 13-year-old and was arrested and detained at Selmar Juvenile Facility. The passenger was a 15-year-old female. She was released to her parents. Our motor officer sustained minor injuries, fortunately, to his mouth and his left side. He was admitted to a hospital and then released. The driver of the civilian vehicle was also treated and released. And based on the investigation, it appears this juvenile, 13-year-old, was under the influence of alcohol during the incident. Robbery homicide took this investigation and handled it, and several charges were filed against the juvenile. Then on Saturday, July 15th, Chief Moore and other department personnel, to include Deputy Chief Gerald Woodyard, Commander Ruby Flores, and Senior Lead Officer Cindy Wada, who is our department's LGBTQ plus liaison, all attended the South LA Pride celebration. The chair of the South LA Pride event is community activist Jasmine Canick, who extended an invitation to the department to participate in the event, and we're thankful to Ms. Canick for that invitation. This was the 5th annual South LA Pride celebration, and it was important that we were there to be present and support this event, especially during a time when we've seen the impacts of over 500 pieces of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation. It is important for us to gather together, show the city and the country that we stand together, shoulder to shoulder, with our LGBTQ plus community. We are committed and will continue to work with all of our communities to ensure a safer LA. And then finally, on Saturday, July 15th, approximately 12:45 p.m., there was an arrestee that passed in 77th Jail. The events began on Friday, July 14th at approximately 2:30 p.m. when plainclothes officers from 77th Street Division detained a male approximately 51 years old at Vermont and 71st Street. During their investigation, it was discovered that the person was in possession of what the officers believed methamphetamine, and additionally, he had 2 outstanding warrants for his arrest. He was arrested and he was transported to 77th Jail and booked 77th Station and booked at the 77th Jail. Later on that afternoon at approximately 5:30 p.m., the arrestee was examined by 77th Street Dispensary medical staff, who determined that this individual needed further treatment due to exposure from methamphetamine and a pre-existing heart condition. So he was transported to a contract hospital where he was examined by their medical professionals, and then he was cleared for booking. Just after midnight on July 15th, officers transported the arrestee back to 77th Street Jail, where he was housed in a single-person cell. And then on the morning of the 15th at approximately 11:44 a.m., this individual stood up from his bed. He took a few steps and he collapsed on the floor. Approximately 15 minutes later, jail personnel discovered him on the floor and immediately summoned medical staff. CPR was administered until the fire department paramedics responded and took over life-saving measures. Unfortunately, he did not respond to life-saving measures, and at 12:45 p.m., he was pronounced deceased. Force Investigation Division investigators responded and are treating this as an in-custody death and are investigating this incident. And then moving on to our crime stats for the week. So for the week ending July 15th, 2023, compared to 2022, year-to-date, violent crime is down 9.7%, property crime is down 0.9%, and overall Part 1 crime is down 3%. And compared to 2019, violent crime is down 0.3%, property crime is up 6.4%, and overall Part 1 crime is up by 4.9%. For the week, there were 7 homicides compared to 7 homicides for the same time period last year with no change. Year-to-date, we have seen 163 homicides compared to 207 in 2022, which is a 21.3% decrease, or 44 less homicides this year-to-date compared to 2022. Compared to 2019, homicides are up 18.1%, or 25 more homicides this year compared to 2019. There were 27 victims shot for the week versus 20 for the same week in 2022. That's a 35% increase. But year-to-date, there have been 647 victims shot compared to 773, which is a overall decrease of 16.3%, or 126 less victims shot this year compared to last year. But compared to 2019, victims shot are up 15.3%. We are down in every violent crime category year-to-date, including a 14.3% reduction in robberies. But as you just heard from our victim shot, we still continue to struggle with gun violence, and we're working on that. We are down in all property crime categories except for theft. Year-to-date, thefts are up 13.9% compared to 2022. However, thefts are down 6.5% compared to 2019. Violent crime arrests are up 2.1%, and Part 1 arrests are up 4.1%, and all arrests overall are up 10.3%. I know I talked about an in-custody death. We didn't have any officer-involved shootings for the week, but just to catch everyone up on our data. So year-to-date 2023, we are at 13 officer-involved shootings. Last year at this time, we were at 19 officer-involved shootings. That's 6 less, which is a decrease of 31.6%. And comparing that to 2019, we had 14 at the same time last year, which is 1 less, or 7% decrease compared to 2019. And then moving on to our personnel strength. There has been no change in our personnel strength from the numbers that Chief Moore reported last week. Sworn personnel deployed is at 9,027. Civilian personnel deployed is at 2,644. Our total reserve officers are 442. Our volunteers are at 2,298, and our cadets are at 1,182. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Chief Choi. Commissioner Kalanche, any questions for Chief Choi?
I just don't know if well, I'll just ask it. So there was a article today in the Times regarding an incident that occurred last year, no, 2 years ago, 2021. So it describes our officers tasing a person. So I just wanted to.
Come before the board.
I'm not sure. That's why I'm yeah. So maybe I'll just wait, just to make sure.
Thank you. Commissioner Suthers, any questions for Chief Choi?
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, thank you for your comments. Just one question on the on the Retail Theft Summit. I know we continue to be plagued with these takeovers of stores by individuals going in and grabbing a lot of things. I happened to be out at 77th a couple weeks ago to address roll call, and several hours before I got there, the Nike store was victimized by the same thing again. Is there a concerted effort to work with these retail owners to somehow mitigate this and/or respond to it?
Thank you for that. Yes, there is, absolutely. So part of this retail summit, again, was driven because of the increase in retail crimes and some of these takeovers of these retail stores. But the discussions during this summit included partnering with these retailers, educating on what they can do for asset protection. So, putting some of the valuables towards the back of the store, putting them behind locked cases, other things like that. And then also having contacts at their local divisions so they can reach out immediately. Or if there's a spree going on, we can notify these retailers, keep them informed, and they can start to take action preventively before these things occur. So a lot of education occurred during this summit. We have great partnerships with our retailers. Some of our larger ones I discussed was Target and Shoe Warehouse. But yes, those discussions are absolutely happening.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Commissioner Suthers. There being no further questions for the chief at this time, I'd like to go to item 2 on the agenda, public comment. Madam Secretary, please call the
The
first.
first speaker is Red Chief Hunt.
Good morning. I come here to clarify some stuff. You guys been putting people out of meetings for decorum and stuff like that. The case is called Hunt versus the City of Los Angeles, CV 1207261 DSF. The case is called Fuck White Niggers Too. The reason why it's called Fuck White Niggers Too is the actual ticket that the city put on the ticket. You guys are kicking people out for their decorum and things like that, which is unconstitutional. Interruption, you guys did that with Herman. You guys got the police on him. To Mr. Briggs, I do have the whole case right here. That's noted right here, if you want to read it, adjudicated by Stephen Rhodey and the federal judge. What you're doing is just really wrong to the people. Their 3 minutes is their 3 minutes. And let me touch on something else. The bomb that went off over there in my old neighborhood, and those people were marching for solidarity and get their neighborhood cleaned up. It hasn't been done. It hasn't been done properly and things like that. And number 3, I had 4 burglaries in my house in 1 month, and it haven't been addressed by the 77th Division. I don't know where Chief Michael Moore is. He's usually investigating that stuff. And I was brutally attacked over there in my neighborhood. But nevertheless, I'm still looking for this guy. But in retrospect, you guys do have to follow the law, and you guys do have to listen to the public. The city of Los Angeles has done so much bad stuff. They arbitrarily, capriciously, and facetiously abused my rights. It arrested me 93 times, and it came back in federal court that about 50 of them arrests was unconstitutional. If you ever watch Birdseed arrest on YouTube, you would be really embarrassed of the Los Angeles Police Department. I mean, just outlandish. Have you guys moved on further past the no? You guys are still in the same rut that you guys been in, because you can't get any change with the old bad regime, and that's what, a lot of people are saying. So you guys, either some changes need to be made or some people need to leave. Sometimes people have been here too long, and you can't get any better quality service in the Los Angeles Police Department. I asked for Woodridge to be relieved and taken over by Chief Marina, because he's not a politician and he doesn't know what he's doing. The LA Police Department doesn't stop crime. The community stop crime. It's because the community goes out and stops the crime, not LAPD, the Red Chief Hunt. You guys all got a copy of this, so it won't be a problem anymore.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Next, we have Philip Tabby.
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I agree with the previous caller on his points, but on today's episode of Did You Know, Chief of Police lied to the people when he said he will not receive a 7-year chief pension if reelected. But did you know Chief Moore caters to politicians' interests like soft on crime Monica Rodriguez rather than to the interests of the people? He punishes those who report truth to power. Did you know Chief Moore has faithful minions like Deputy Chief Braggs-a-Lot Hamilton? Can you believe this guy makes over $800,000 a year? And that's why he doesn't have to listen to Monica, his words. But I find that funny because in the presence of several witnesses, He said, give Monica what she wants when it came to providing officers for her drone show. Or how about when Monica got our equestrian officers alone for a photo shoot for her campaign? Not one citation written, no cop work was done, but she's using tax dollars. Queen Monica gets what she wants. So don't lie to us. We see right through you. Never have I seen a deputy chief single out a division like attending coffee with a cop and monitoring other community meetings a month after month. We sure hope the intimidation tactics have ceased because the people will never stop speaking truth to power. Did you know when the bomb exploded in a South Los Angeles neighborhood a year ago, Chief Moore and Assistant Chief Rob Marino were drinking it up at Salt Creek, and Marino was told to stay behind with the ladies? Our command staff is failing the people. This is the same Marino who caused an international incident. How many days suspension did he get, Mike? You promoted him, that's right. And now a story comes out, LA Times, LAPD refused to ID officers behind a huge fireworks explosion. Now we have their names. If I recall, Mike, you didn't remove anyone from the bomb squad. You promoted them, like I said in January. Matter of fact, I know of 3 other people you have promoted who were involved in criminal activity or had brushes with the law. We can save that for next week's episode. But Mike, you punish people you don't like and you promote those who follow along with your agenda. You're creating a bad culture in the LAPD. The numbers say it all. I have information on retirements, Mike. In 2020, there were only 2 to 3 retirements a week, but now you're seeing sometimes numbers up to 6 to 7 a day. That's 8 to 12 people a month retiring in 2020 and 24 to 28 people a month retiring in 2023. Prove me wrong. It was said to you before in a meeting, when you continue to sail toward the jagged rocks, your crew will abandon you. And you know what? Since you're not here, it makes me wonder if you're on another credit union junket flying around in King Air. Fire Chief Moore. God bless the LAPD.
The next speaker is Jonathan Foster.
Hi, good morning, Jonathan Foster. I guess the Zoom circus will talk. There's been 5 weeks of no OIS. Thank you. I support it 98%, but I got to talk about the 2% of grossness. I still think the starting pay should be $45 an hour. Here's the way things were. It'll be sober off at the end.
So, I'm going to ask for order. If we don't have order, these
Well, a little collage I did in 21. Still, the chief lied. He's appointed, and at the time he was appointed, Soberoff was here, part of the Jewish Federation of LA. Goldsmith was here, part of the Jewish Federation of LA. That got switched. She left, and Eileen came in, part of the Jewish Federation of LA. And Goldsmith went to an advisory board, and this was all done by Jewish Federation of LA participant Eric the Toilet Mayor, Paquito Bandito. So the people did not appoint the chief. It wasn't appointed by the people. Very few, microscopic number of few Jews appointed the chief. This isn't representation of the people. It's Jewish supremacy, Jewish racism. And they get to blame white people. And the real reason the LAPD can't hire is because the ADL advisory board. It's not a government agency. It's doing the work that should be done by the police, but the police aren't doing this. And this is a bunch of bullshit. And this isn't a swear word. They want to walk in bulls into a building and chop the heads off, and then the bullshit falls out its asshole. None of these are swear words, because when you talk about it this way, or a lamb, they want to chop off the lamb's head and lamb shit falls out. Yeah. Yeah, it's a bunch of bullshit, disobedient, stiff-necked people, haters of Christianity. This is why you can't hire anybody. You're hating Jesus. The trouble comes from the rejection of out of compliance. They're out of compliance of Jesus. This is why you can't hire anybody.
Next, we have Steve Rogers.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please, and for the record, I'm requesting 5 minutes, but I probably won't get it because virtually speaking, and people have gone overtime because there's been a lack of enforcement of the rules. And I put that at the feet of Briggs. I sent a letter to be posted today. It was not posted. In fact, there were no letters posted, and I'm wondering why that is. In a city of millions, there are no people that are sending in correspondence for the record. So I'm looking forward to seeing that as soon as possible. Maybe we post it later today. Chief Choi, maybe you want to advocate for certain rights, what you call the LGBTQ plus legislation. The LAPD should be in the business of enforcing the law, protecting and serving, and not being an advocate for any particular community. All communities deserve the same professional service, and they're not getting it. And some communities are acknowledged and others are not. There should be clergy councils in every division. I will use Central Division as the example, Division number 1, which covers downtown Los Angeles. And what I don't see, if you go on their site, I don't see CPAB minutes. I don't see a newsletter. I see no information on how community policing can actually become a reality. You have a national night out coming on August 1st that wasn't mentioned, or hasn't been mentioned at all. And that's an opportunity for the community and the police to get together. Now, I will say this, Chief Moore does have a good July message. If people haven't seen it, 1,500 people have viewed it on YouTube. Only 50 people put a thumbs up. I was one of them because when he says something that's right and correct, I applaud him, while other times I disagree with him. Briggs doesn't seem to really understand the Constitution. It had to be explained to him by the first speaker today, who I may vehemently disagree with, but the US Constitution is the US Constitution. And people have a right to speak, and there is no category as hate speech, which some people have brought up. There's no exception for hate speech to the US Constitution Amendment 1. I also want to say this, God bless the LAPD. We support the LAPD, we want community policing to work. Going back to retail theft, you should be locking up thieves, not merchandise. Okay, if you go into a store, you see everything is locked up because the thievery is epidemic. So maybe when there are consequences for crime, including thievery, there'll be a change. And remember, it's only reported crime that you're mentioning, not unreported crime. And there is a lot of unreported crime. Get out there, see what's going on, walk the streets, take the subways, take the buses. God bless the LAPD and stay safe. Thank you.
The next speaker is Stenson Tolan Jr.
Yeah, I got something that gives the Attorney General a book that I wrote about what happened to me in my life there. And I worked for City of Santa Monica Police Station for 22 and a half years, and I'll be 80 on Thursday. And my son ripped me off the house, used my my credit, and I went to everybody, and plus I went downtown to the assessor's office, emailed papers down to the assessor's office with no ID or nothing like that. And I went down there around about 3 weeks ago and asked them about it. You know, we don't do that. I know they did it because, you know, nobody don't mail nothing downtown to the assessor's office and then no ID showing. And then it goes back to Bank of America and then boom, and then they put a close on my house. It's all over the internet, and I went to everybody in this book. I tell you everything in this book, and I want to give one to the commissioner. Could you give that to the commissioner? And I think, let me see, make sure that this is, okay, and this goes to the Attorney General. Yeah, and a picture of my brother, Bobby Tolan, baseball player, played back in the 70s. And I got a whole bunch of papers work you can, I got a whole bunch of paperwork inside here, and I want you to, for the Attorney General and the Chief of Police, this was going on our system. And then I went to 77 100 times, and then they say, why do you sign the papers? My son knocked me out the house and mailed paper, him and his girlfriend mailed papers downtown to the assistant's office, and I didn't know nothing about it. And then all my credit report, all the information on my credit report, and see, this TransUnion, Equifax, I got the paper with Equifax, put it on my credit, and they took the house with all his information on there. And he didn't put Stetson Everton III. And I got all the documents in here, and I wish he'd help me out. Be 80 years old Thursday, and I try to help the people, but they don't listen. Like the LAPD didn't even listen to me. And I've been down there 100 times, downtown, and they start playing games with me. And I decided to write a book. And I had a twin brother. I lost my twin brother. We're the same age, 80 years old, and he passed away. So I told him I'm gonna take care of it. This book help everybody. The senior citizen. You got families and stuff like that, and you got kids growing up and stuff like that. Teach them the right way to go, and that's all I gotta say. Because this is completely wrong. I can work hard for 22 and a half years at the police station with cheap butts. How come they can't do the same thing I do? And this book will tell you, what's going on in life. Because like this, nobody don't want to listen. And then you go through all the government agency, they start playing games with you too. Even the social worker. And I called the social worker up, and she said, what do you want to tell me about this? Why do you sign the paper? Start hollering at me and everything there. They doesn't even listen, and they need more training for all this stuff, and they help the people out, especially 77, like the detectives, and plus he stole my 75 Pontiac.
Mr.
Okay.
Tillon, your time is up. Thank you very much for your comments. Your book will be provided to the commissioners.
Okay,
Thank you.
What about these paperwork? Yeah, it's got everything in it. Thank you
Commissioner-
for listening to me, okay?
Commissioner, could we
Appreciate
request a
it.
follow-up just to find out the status
I got some more paperwork.
from Chief Choi at some point? Yeah.
Yes.
Next, we have T.
Hello,
Hi, what items would you like to speak on?
all of them, and I really wish you would put up the agenda. Okay, so first of all, today, Briggs, today is not July 11th, it's July 18th. Just wanted to notate that on the detail-oriented status of things. Power and strength to the families that have their loved ones killed by law enforcement. We're still on stolen land. So, Officer Choi, I don't know why you decided to open with property retail summits, with corporations that make billions of dollars, and y'all are partnering with corporations about retail theft. When we really should be concerned about homelessness and mental health issues here, because y'all are still getting $3.4 billion a year plus another 87 million, plus every agenda item every week, you're all are asking for more money. You know, if the communities had resources, these things wouldn't happen. If society had their basic needs, housing, food, healthcare, mental health services, we wouldn't have these issues. But y'all keep eating up our budget. Also, Officer Choi, why didn't you open with the in custody death? You started with retail summits of corporations that make billions of dollars, right? And their retail loss instead of the loss of life of someone in custody. Now, you said that the man had fallen off his bed, and 15 minutes it took y'all to respond to this man, or he jumped off the bed. And you mentioned 15 minutes. How did it take 15 minutes for y'all to respond to someone in custody? You know, kind of reminds me of Waukesha Wilson, that 22 minutes of the video is still missing, and y'all said it was suicide, but we all know different. It's not suicide when it happens in custody, just like John Horton, but that's Men's Central, so that's the sheriff's, but that's a whole nother area, the 3,000 boys and sheriff gangs. You know, and then Kalanche here talking about the time taser and shouldn't even go through with the story. Are you talking about Keenan Anderson that was tased to death? Somebody that was in a car accident that needed help. It was in distress, and y'all murdered him, and it definitely was out of policy, just like Rashario Mack getting murdered in the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall. That was out of policy.
And the next speaker is Andrew G.
Okay, starting off with the Chiefs report. Regardless of who's doing it, the Chiefs report should be limited to 3 minutes total at every meeting, unless you're going to allow us to match the time of the Chiefs report. Today that was 10 minutes, so we should all get 10 minutes to speak. That doesn't include all the ridiculous softball questions that you asked the chief to make it look like you're challenging the chief, but, we were just, wasting our time, basically. So yeah, the assistant chief mentioned something about like the LAPD supporting the LGBTQ community, but he did not mention what the LAPD did at Sataquai Elementary last month, where they stood by and allowed a bunch of fascists to attack LGBTQ activists. A bunch of fascists who were complaining because the school was actually being accepting and such. So the LAPD is not on the side of the LGBTQ community. Moving on to the consent agenda, we have a bunch of donations on here. Fuck the Police Foundation. All this is just a backdoor way to give more for corporations to continue to fund the LAPD when we're trying. Just in addition, the LAPD already has $3 billion every year. The LAPD needs less funding, not more. We have item 3G, which is a donation for the National Night Out, which is happening at, of course, as you would always expect, the local cemetery. So yeah, LAPD partying at a cemetery. We have item 3E, which includes a donation from the LAPPL. So is the LAPD now accepting bribes from the LAPPL? I wonder about that, because it's like, why is there donations from the LAPPL on here? Like it's all just a big mess. And in the LAPPL needs to go, along with the LAPD. All right, moving on to the agenda items. The presentation on immigration enforcement. It's interesting to know when the commission. This will probably be presided over by the commission president, who still hasn't apologized for his xenophobic remarks about immigrants from Chile at a recent meeting. Um, so so yeah, abolish the police and fuck all of you.
Next, we have caller ending 1264. Caller 1264, you're on.
Really have to ask the question is at this point, is the LAPD actively working against the public, or for the public? I mean, this is ridiculous. We're constantly not working our laws. We just had a takeover of all Why isn't the community police on it? Why isn't any of the other officers on that? I mean, we're constantly burning rubber, causing a lot of pollution. We're right by a freeway. Really ridiculous. We need to know how the community policing works, because all the time that I've been dealing with them, I have never really had a chance to understand how it works and how it benefits the public. It's just like you go through this whole theater and try to convince the people that you're doing a good job, but we know that the actual outcomes are not good. Over by crime, by noise, and we're always constantly told that there's nothing that they can do. So we really need to start enforcing our laws, being more proactive on prevention. This is the Foothill Division that seems to, in my opinion, ignore a lot of the issues that we're involved with. And I don't know if it's because of staffing issues or if it's because of them not just caring because they don't live in the community. I mean, my community police officers do not live in Los Angeles. So they don't necessarily live in the community. So kind of have to ask the question, do they really care, or should they care? Because they can go home. We have to stay here because we live here. So we need to really start doing.
Okay. Thank you.
The next speaker, Hamid Khan.
So Briggs really doesn't know the Constitution. I mean, when he talks about public records and the release of information released publicly of public employees working for a public institution, getting paid by public dollars, and it turns it into an invasion of privacy. That's the kind of bullshit leadership that we are looking at, which brings me to the Watch the Watchers website. And I was just looking up Dominique Choi's information. So I guess he's been on the force since 1995. And regular pay in 2022, and this is all public records from the LAPD themselves. Regular pay $317,000, other pay $42,000, health benefits $20,000, retirement benefits $148,000. So the package really comes to about $530,000. And yesterday we responded to this article in the LA Times that top LAP police union official tells cops to go somewhere that understands your worth. I mean, what is the worth? Let's start to look at it. So more than 9,200 of them paid in six figures. More than 2,300 of the cops covered by the pending contract were paid over $250,000 in 2022. There's this one dude, Michael Noke, Knoke, Sergeant 2, hired in 2002, and he made $503,000. Then he had another guy, John Poland, motorcycle cop, who was paid $202,793 just in overtime. So that's where a lot of the monies are going. And I think which points to, again, the complete failure, which we don't expect much, because this body is really a shock absorbers. I mean, if you look at it historically, the police commission has been around since 1926 or 1927. So every time they've been absent, Watts uprising happens in the 1960s. What do? They bring an outside commission, McCone Commission. Well, where the fuck was the police commission, right? They bring the McCone Commission, a CIA director, to see what happened. Rodney King uprising happens. What do? They have the Webster Commission first, another CIA director. Then they bring in Christopher Commission, another establishment tool. Where the fuck is the police commission? George Floyd uprisings happen. They have 3 separate independent studies going on. The Rampart scandal happens. The DOJ has to come in with a threat to sue the city, the police commission, and the department, and then they agree to a consent decree. So when we come here, we don't come here expecting these fools to do anything at all. It's our duty to expose them. It is our duty to discredit them. It is our duty to disrupt them constantly. Because that's where all the monies are going. It's not just over $3.4 billion. It's like all the federal grants, everything else. And whenever you see the police commission agenda, 7 or 8 items are just money passed through and money passed through and money passed through. So let's not get disheartened. Let's keep on coming, because we owe it to the community that if we have the time available and we are in this position, we have to constantly expose and disrupt and discredit and neutralize this body. Thank you.
Next, we have Norma.
Yes, thank you. All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
My name is Norma, and I'm here to show my support of the LAPD. But it does hurt to hear all these issues with this department due to lack of strong leadership that truly represents the police. I don't agree with defunding the police. I feel that the need for money is the reason for all these approvals from item number 3, which I strongly support. A few meetings behind ago, I didn't have a chance to speak regarding the street racing and takeovers and how the police is thinking of suggesting that there be no consequences for individuals taking over our streets and putting people in danger, because these are bad choices made by young people. And I say we need to stop being soft on these people. It's the same thing that's happening with illegal fireworks. With these people continue to make bad choices because they're young, but they continue to put ordinary citizens, law-abiding citizens in danger. So we need to stop being soft on them. We haven't forgotten about Captain Smith and the situation with Slow Contreras. We want them back in our community. I thank you, and I yield the rest of my time.
The next speaker is Matios Cadane.
My name is Matios with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, speaking on all items, and really just continuing what Hamid was speaking on. This, board and this police department really is a group of very wealthy people who claim to have the best interests of poor Black and brown Angelenos in mind, and that's laughable. But if you break down, again, the history of the LAPD Board of Police Commissioners, and even just the history of the LAPD, it's all kind of laughable, right? And the clear intent is a veneer of legitimacy here. And so if we look at the agenda for today, there's a request for proposals for organizational assessments. That's kind of ridiculous when you think about the fact that this board has never been able to hold this department accountable. But what's the thinking behind requesting proposals for a third party to come in and do so? If we look at the audit of alternatives to armed responses last week, we know who the LAPD is going to pick to provide this assessment, right? It's a group they can deputize, a group that is aligned with their continued existence, with their continued practices of violence. So it's just another thing to laugh at. And there are plenty of mechanisms for this, right? The department has a mechanism to receive and has received thousands of racial bias complaints, but dismisses or rules all of them unfounded. And that comes in place during times of crises, right? That's when these mechanisms roll out. So if we look at the bombing of 27th and San Pedro, what did this board do? What did the department do? They hid the identities of these officers, they promoted them, and they dismissed the deaths of Alzi Hutchins and Ramon Reyes, dismissed the displacement of those community members. It's all theater. It's constructed and choreographed questions and criticisms. There's no real oversight here. And we actually got a glimpse of y'all breaking character just now when Kalanchi asked, well, was about to ask about a black filmmaker who was tased after he called LAPD for help. And Briggs, you dismissed Kalanchi. I'm sure you'll cite some procedural rationale for that. But I think we all know it's because you haven't taken time with the LAPD to rehearse what your response is. And so what is this theater? What is this veneer? What are these responses in service to? It's two things, right? One is to kind of soften and hide the racist violence that the LAPD perpetuates, has always perpetuated and continues to perpetuate. We just heard about it on the LA Times today. 27th and San Pedro is an example of that. The other is to sustain this myth that the LAPD exists to keep people safe. This whole notion of protect and serve, right? A myth that but y'all have perpetually sold to community members to justify their continued existence and their continued violence. And that's cracking, right? We're seeing a consistent call for abolition of policing, the defunding of policing, right? And what we're seeing right now is this kind of last grasp at legitimacy, at staying alive and functional. And in fact, it's even manifesting within your own department. As we talked about within the LA Times, this Sergeant Sandoz from the LAPPL talked about how officers should have a mass exodus and go to other departments. That's a reflection of the community stepping into the reality that we've always experienced. You're irrelevant, and I yield the rest of my time.
And our final Zoom speaker, EP.
Yes, hello.
Hi, what items would you
I'd
like
like
to speak on?
I'd like to speak on all of the items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yeah. First, I wanted to touch on the summit that you had about retail theft. Wanted to highlight the fact that wage theft consists of over $50 billion. That is corporations and businesses stealing from their workers and not paying them what their workers are due, whereas retail theft consists of 15 billion. So that's over 3 times the amount. And yet y'all are talking about retail theft because, as Matios and the rest of the callers on the Zoom have highlighted, y'all are not there to serve poor, working class, marginalized people of color. Are there largely to serve the interest of the rich. That's what you do week after week, month after month, year after year. And the public and the community is very well aware of that, and we're on to you, and we're sick of it. Also wanted to highlight this shoulder-to-shoulder comment with the LGBTQ plus community. I also was there at North Hollywood during the transphobic event where the police repeatedly allowed people from the LGBTQ plus side to be assaulted and brutalized and did absolutely nothing. While on the line, they faced them, or rather faced us, and essentially we're protecting them and allowing them to do whatever it is that they wanted to do. And this happens time and time again. It happened in Glendale. It happened in K-Town with the Wee Spa, where white supremacists and homophobes and fascists were essentially giving police orders. And this is all on video. It's all recorded. And the police complied. No one from their side were arrested. And our side continues to get brutalized, arrested, and nothing happens. So, long story short, I think, there are certainly some people with some moral conscience and fiber in their body. And I think the best thing that y'all can do, I'm looking at you potentially, Camache, is to call it out and speak on it, because the rest of the public, we're not dumb, right? We see the commission for what it is. We see these individuals for what they are. So, do something honorable and step down and highlight the corruption within this body and within the department. That's about it. I yield the rest of my time. You have a day that you all deserve.
The next speaker is Zach Sherwin.
Assistant Chief Choi opened up by saying, as Chief Moore usually does, I'll talk about significant events from the past week. You did do as Chief Moore usually does, but I would not say that you addressed significant events from the past week. For instance, on Friday, the Times published an article headlined, LAPD refused to ID officers behind a huge fireworks explosion. Now we have their names. So, no mention from this board in years of that incident, even though it's something that, especially around this time of year, the public might be interested in hearing a follow-up in. Of course, it doesn't happen. And then, similarly, no mention of the black filmmaker who was brutalized by your fellow officers, Chief Choi. And then we had that really interesting interaction where Commissioner Kalanche broaches the topic, and then Briggs says something like, is that matter going to be coming before the board? And then Kalanche shrinks back down, and then we continue on with the meeting. First of all, it's very reminiscent of the incident in which Commissioner Kalanche broached the topic of, why don't we let people who come down in person give their public comment, even if it exceeds perhaps by 10 or 15 minutes the rigidly and permanently instituted 45 public comment period, which there's so much precedent for, Commissioner Briggs, which just for years was the way that it always was. It certainly wasn't an instance of you pouncing on the technological constraints of the pandemic to like mission creep, your shrinking of the time that the public has to speak in this pathetic meeting, taking advantage of that and doing what you're doing. So, why don't you take a moment and explain to the public what Commissioner Kalanche was saying that caused you to say whatever it was you said that made her back down? I mean, literally, your commitment to opacity and your hostility to the public who takes an interest in these meetings, even if we don't agree with your positions and where you come from, it's just evident how much you hate. You've got this scowl on your face when people are criticizing the cops. You're the one sitting in the most powerful seat in this room, and yet your fragility just screams with every facial micro expression and the way that you improvise the rules for this meeting on an ongoing week-to-week basis. One week we can't pace on that side of the room. Another week we're not allowed to stand. None of it's ever enforced, or if it is enforced, it's arbitrarily and disproportionately against black men who come to this meeting. It's just absurd. Commissioner Briggs, when you're out of shape, dead career goons throw us out of the room, as seems to be happening on a weekly basis, I'd like you to instruct them to be a little bit more respectful and less unnecessarily menacing as they loom super close and walk us out of the room. The LAPD's hostility to the people who come to these meetings, my point is just as evident as yours is. The citizen's voice in police affairs. I yield the rest of my time to today's meeting.
The next speaker is Audrey G. on items 2 and 3D.
So I'm a bit rusty, speaking to a room full of evil, soulless people. But I'm going to give it a try, okay? First of all, I don't think that any of you coming as an attendee would think that it made any sense or showed any goodwill to force us to make public comment before you have discussed what you're going to talk about. Many of us here are torn between going to the BOS meeting, the city council meeting, and this meeting. I don't think any of you would think that there's any reason in the world you can't reschedule this meeting so that we could be free to attend other very important civic meetings. I think that it's really inauthentic to have a whole agenda of consent items. There's no such thing. In a city where so many people support defunding the police, divesting those funds, investing them in important social services, how you can think that anything about a donation to the Los Angeles Police Department, who we want to defund, could be uncontroversial. That's just not possible. There's no such thing as community safety partnerships. These are, if those, I just want to quote my people's mayor, who has always reminded us, Gina Viola, thank you, that well-resourced communities don't resort to crime, are safe. We don't need police in our communities. We can take care of ourselves. Police don't do anything to prevent crime. And they just out there trying to get people to turn each other in, to turn on each other, to distrust each other, and trust the police. It's ridiculous. And I just want to say that you are all so superb at brushing things under the carpet that we will not let you forget. How much have you addressed publicly the hush-hush task force email? How can you not center that? That is the epitome of everything we hate about law enforcement, that they hate the houseless people, they only protect homeowners and property people, and that they're willing to be deceptive and work behind the scenes to create horrible criminalization. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker is Adam Smith.
See, Steve's busy on Twitter, too busy to be here. There's $90,000 in donations for cadet programs, and I'm surprised no one had any questions about the child sexual abuse and how to maybe address what is systemically a problem within LAPD youth programs and in interactions with children in general with this department. What interventions are being made by the Citizens' Voice in Police Affairs to interrupt and intervene in this violence committed by and covered up by police? No questions, Errol Southers? ABC 7 reported that 5 officers were hospitalized after being exposed to meth 3 days ago, and LA Mag repeated it yesterday. And I noticed Assistant Chief Choi didn't mention anything about that. I noticed on Twitter, many LAPD officers retweeted that report. The LA Police Foundation account retweeted it. The Twitter account of the LAPD's so-called Gang and Narcotics Division retweeted it. The fact that no commissioner asked any questions about it and that Choi didn't say anything makes it quite clear what we already knew, that exposure to drugs the way cops imagine it is laughable and would be funnier if it wasn't calculated propaganda by this department and your partners in the media. I wonder if any of the reporters that were here but left before public comment will bring it up in any future stories, Libor. And the fact that 5 imaginary officers going to the hospital wasn't mentioned at police commission. Lou Calanche, just to lift up what others have said, what question were you going to ask? And why did business casual Bill silence you? What questions will you ask in closed session today regarding the murder by your officers of Marcos Maldonado last July in Hollenbeck, who was shot and killed last year holding a toy? I think one of the most telling things about what quote-unquote police oversight does is view violence against the community through policy and procedure, not through the victimization and continued violence perpetuated against the community. Like how to refine who and how police use violence and how that violence can be legitimized, not how it can be stopped. So, you all are terrible. It's just, yeah, it's really telling what this commission is for and what it's not for, Lou. What's up, Mr. T?
Thank you. At this time, we're going to go to item number 3 on the agenda, the consent agenda items. I'd like to hold aside items 3B and 3C for discussion. I move that we approve the department's request for items 3A, D, E, F, and G. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. May we have Deputy Chief Reyna come forward for item 3B, the department's report for request for proposal for marketing and advertising services. Morning, Chief Reyna.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chief Choi, Inspector General, Mr. T-Fang, Mr. Song. On the agenda, obviously, is the RFP proposal. We've discussed this before, Police Commission. This is part of our ongoing efforts for our advertising and marketing campaign for our recruitment. As we had discussed before, we had originally had what they refer to as a task order solicitation, which was a mini RFP. And we went through that process with the board and put that out to the approved vendors for the city. However, there was no proposals that came in for that task order solicitation. So the next process is the request for proposal. And that is a larger one that is open to more vendors that are outside the city approved vendors. In a sense, anyone can put their proposals in. So part of that process now is for the approval of the Police Commission to allow that request for proposal to move forward through the process. What we're going to do is for fiscal year 23-24, there are funds up to $500,000 that were earmarked for this. However, probably not all of that will be used. Some will be held back for recruitment, employment division expenses, and there's approximately $622,000 reappropriated funds from fiscal year 22-23 that will be earmarked also for this RFP. With the approval of the Police Commission, the RFP will be launched, and vendors then can submit their proposals. On your agenda item, you'll see that there's TBD on the dates. Those would be filled in, obviously, before the RFP is made public. We can't put those in first until the Police Commission approves that. The timeline for that is we will launch the RFP and be very specific in the prescribed dates of when they have to submit their proposals. At that time, we'll review the proposals, ask questions, answer questions for vendors, and then we'll ask for presentations and review all proposals before choosing a vendor. Once that happens, we'll come back to the Police Commission with the proposal and the tentative contract, get approval from the Police Commissioner, answer any questions that you may have before that goes forward. And once that is approved, then it goes to the city attorney and the CAO's office for their processing. And depending on how long that proposal is, if it's 3 years or less, it'll just need Police Commission approval. If it's more than 3 years, it would have to go to the City Council after that. So this is, again, the first step in the kind of a long process, but hopefully we can expedite it and be efficient in our measures to get it through to get our marketing and advertising going for the department.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Suthers, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Chief Reyna. First, I know we're going to fill this in, but please let me know when the mandatory pre-proposal conference date has been identified.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to be there. Second, in section 5.1 of the proposal, the business inclusion program and the outreach for that program, while I know we have a website for this matter, I just want to make sure the department is ensuring outreach to minority, women, disabled veteran, and other businesses. And what I'd like is, once we have gone to the proposal process, I'd just like to see a document of the outreach efforts that were made in this regard to demonstrate that there was outreach to business, to support this business inclusion program, so that minority, women, vets, and others have an opportunity to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. Similar to when I was here last time with the Police Foundation marketing and advertising proposal, we discussed having community involvement and community groups and working through our CSPB, Community Safety Partnership Bureau, to identify groups that can have input as to what they like to see in the advertising, marketing, and how to reach different demographics within the city and outside the city.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Suthers. Commissioner Kalante, any questions for Chief Reyna?
Just quickly. Do we have a budget for this? Is it on here? Or is
Yeah.
it based on the, whatever is proposed by?
It's $622,000 of reappropriated funds from last fiscal year.
Okay.
And then up to $500,000 of earmarked funds this year. Most likely would be about $400,000 of that, so you're coming in about $1 million for the marketing and advertising.
So then we will select one contractor for that amount?
We could select
or-
one, or we could select two. We have that option. If we have two different companies, for example, come in with two different proposals that Maybe one is gearing towards a certain, like social media, and others gearing towards a different advertising campaign. We do reserve the right to have two different vendors if we want to.
That's it, thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I move that we approve the department's report. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. This time, we're going to have Commander Flores come forward with respect to the department's report for request for proposal for organizational assessment of the department. Good morning, Commander Flores. Commander Flores, can you just give us a brief overview of this assessment and, in your opinion, the reason it's needed at this time?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So what you have before you is a request for a proposal to conduct an organizational assessment. So if you recall, about 2 years ago, when we published the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Plan, there are two pillars. We have an introspective look at our internal operations, the health of the organization, systems, policies, an effort to make our workplace a more healthy workplace so that everyone has a sense of belonging and true sense of inclusion. Because we firmly believe that the way that we interact with one another in our operations internally certainly transfer to how we treat our community. The second pillar of the DEI plan is community engagement, transparency, and information accuracy that we provide to our public. So with this RFP for this organizational assessment, this is something that is highly desired by many of the employees. In looking and speaking to our affinity groups, it was something that was welcomed and desired so that we can take a deeper dive into looking and understanding what is happening within the organization with real data, qualitative and quantitative, rather than just going off anecdotal information in terms of workplace productivity, team building, career, mentoring, communication, and growth within the department. We do know that we would like to look for areas of concern, but I do believe it's also an opportunity to look and identify our areas of strength, the things that we do well and that we should continue to do.
Thank you, Commander Flores. Commissioner Suthers, any questions?
Thank you, Commander. So will there be any opportunities while we're doing an assessment of the department, will there be any opportunities for community input? Specifically, as was mentioned previously today, it might be an opportunity to use our community policing advisory boards to see what their opinions are. I'm just curious about what kind of external information we might have
Yes, sir.
to support this assessment.
So I think there would be an opportunity, and when we select the organization or institution that would come before a board, and we would then be able to select. During the recommendations and implementation phase, I would like to include some of those community groups, the Police Advisory Board specifically, through our Police Training and Education Unit, because I think the common denominator thing that comes up is more training. The officers want more training, but also there's much to be learned about this world of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that would be an excellent way to incorporate our community members.
Thank you.
Commissioner Clanche, any questions?
Hi, Commander. Question about the initial assessment that was conducted by the city and how this informed your request in this RFP. That's one question. Similar to Commissioner Suthers about opportunities for community input. I'll be honest, I didn't read the whole RFP, but I want to know if there is, in your criteria for selecting a contractor, want to ensure that it's not just internal organizations or community that's working with LAPD already, but that we're hearing a variety of voices from the community, from young people, if there's going to be true community engagement. right? Not just the organizations that are already working with us. So I just wanted to kind of bring those two things up to ensure. And then the last thing is implementation, like what role does the police commission have in kind of assess, because it looks like you're going to have benchmarks, right, for DEI, and I know we've been working on a lot of DEI, initiatives, but at what point does the police commission have a ability to influence the implementation?
Yes, ma'am. So to answer your first question, the citywide survey that was conducted by UCLA, those results are still have not been released. From my understanding, the results for the entire city will be released, I was told, hopefully sometime this month, very soon. And at that time, each of the general managers and the diversity, equity, inclusion officers would then be able to establish some sort of messaging, internal, and begin to look at what those results are and the recommendations from that study. So preliminarily, we just have a very high-level information from that report, which is part of the reason why we decided to go with this RFP. But this has been something that was desired from 2 years ago when we first implemented diversity, equity, inclusion group and the DEI plan. So that was just another layer of information that we have going into seeking this new organizational climate study that's specific to LAPD. Secondarily, in terms of the implementation of the commission and community members, there is a selection process for a board or panel that is mentioned in the RFP, in which we would assemble a panel. There's a scoring system when we select the institution that will receive the project. At that point in time, I will have to consult with, I just have to do some research in terms of perhaps we can have a commissioner, a member, part of that panel, part of the review and implementation, probably someone within the DEI committee that you have.
Commissioners, if I may, during an RFP process, commissioners are not involved in that process at all. They're not involved in the development of the RFP or any evaluation of the RFP. Your only opportunity to have input is when the request for an award comes to you for consideration. At that point in time, you can have questions and raise any issues. But during the entire process, up till that point, you cannot have any input at all. If you do, you have to recuse yourself from a vote.
Okay. Can I ask another question? How have officers been engaged in developing the needs that would be addressed in the RFP? Like, have you been talking to rank and file? Because this is about like the whole department and some of the needs that they have as well. So have you engaged officers and?
Yes, so well, that's where the results from the UCLA study will come in play as well. Because there was an overall survey, but also there were focus groups that were held in which we can drill down and receive more clear information. The researchers did meet with each of the affinity groups as well through their respective memberships. So I believe that the members have been intimately involved, and we will continue to involve them and continue with focus groups and discussions once we have the full results from the UCLA study.
And do you know, last question, do you know if the citywide, excuse me, survey, how many LAPD officers actually responded to the survey?
I don't have the number right offhand, but I do know for a fact that LAPD had the highest number of respondents citywide as compared to the other departments.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kalanche. Commander Flores, when do you anticipate receipt of the entirety of the UCLA study?
I hope in the coming weeks. Right now, we're just at the mercy of across the street, City Hall.
Okay. So it will be your intent to use the UCLA study as somewhat foundational and build on that. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, I move we approve the department's report. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. At this time, we're going to take an 8-minute recess. before we go to item 4A on the regular agenda. Thank you. Good morning, Chief Labrada. How are you?
Good morning.
I'd like to call item 4A on the agenda, the department's report on Immigration Enforcement Task Force reporting requirements and department operations. You have the floor, Chief.
Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Smith, Chief Choi, Mr. Tiefenk, and Mr. De La Guerra. My name is Al Labrada, the Director of Office of Special Operations. I'm currently assigned as the department's immigration liaison for the department as well as our community. Our community immigration advocates for the last 15 years has been one of my roles, is to support our community, and I've had the opportunity to serve as one of the department's immigration liaisons to our immigrant communities for the last 15 years. As an immigrant and formerly undocumented resident myself, I empathize with many of the challenges and concerns of our immigrant residents. Over the years, I have continuously worked with many of the communities consistently in LA. In fact, before today's hearing, I ensured the department's report was received by countless of our advocates electronically, and as a result, many of them are possibly listening and some are in the audience as well. As always, our department remains steadfast in our commitment to communities and the importance of constitutional policing to all residents, regardless of their background, place of birth, or legal status. We will consistently remind our residents through our public and transparent actions that we do not participate in civil immigration enforcement. All our efforts are made to ensure department personnel do not go beyond existing legal authorities and strictly comply with constitutional policing. Since as early as 1979 with our policy of Special Order 40 and through the leadership of Chief Moore, a continued focus remains on education, outreach, discussion, and more importantly, proactive responses to our immigration advocates and community leaders. Our top priority is public safety and building of trust and the demonstration of our agency's transparency and outreach to all our immigrant communities. Our ongoing focus is to ensure the victims and witnesses are not afraid to contact the police and report crime or become witnesses as necessary, regardless of their immigration status. Our focus will always be to maximize public safety for all. The efforts of our department are consistent with the principles set forth in the California's Value Act, with the department's commitment to protecting the public from crime and other harm through collaborative partnerships, including the fair and impartial enforcement of the law, regardless of a person's race, ethnicity, national origin, or civil immigration status. The California Values Act also placed restrictions on participation in local law enforcement agencies in federal immigration enforcement. Most of these restrictions are consistent with long-standing LAPD policies and practices which promote community partnership and public safety that we have adhered to consistently since prior to the implementation of the Values Act in 2018. Our practices throughout 2020 related to ICE detainers, consistent with the report of 2022, is ensuring full compliance as we have. Our department received 783 ICE detainer requests for the 12-month period, and we honored none of those. We had no ICE transfers during this 12-month period. We had no ICE interview requests received or honored, and more importantly, no ICE release notification requests received or honored as well. These findings clearly mirror our department's posture on constitutional policing, that we do not participate in civil immigration enforcement. I want to reassure our community that we remain in full compliance with Office of Chief of Police Notice Immigration Enforcement Procedures dated December 29, 2017, and the state law set forth by the California Values Act of 2018. Under our Joint Task Force participation and operation efforts, the primary purpose of the Joint Law Enforcement Task Force is not immigration enforcement. Instead, our enforcement on investigative duties are strictly related to violation of state or federal law and unrelated to immigration. Our goal is for law enforcement agencies to work collaboratively to help eliminate crimes impacting our vulnerable communities. In the department's ongoing efforts to address violent crime, gang crime, weapons violation, narcotics trafficking, human trafficking, child pornography, human trafficking, and counterterrorism efforts through joint operations with the ATF, FBI, U.S. Secret Service, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and Homeland Security investigations, we can report that we have had no immigration enforcement arrests. As a department, we will continue to make numerous arrests for serious and violent crimes that impact the public safety of our residents. The investigative task force, in summary, of the immigration enforcement efforts operate through Office of Operations, Counterterrorism Special Operations Bureau, and Detective Bureau. We have a total of 24 interagency task forces for LAPD Of those, we made 941 arrests, as outlined in the report. And we made 0 arrests for immigration enforcement during this 12-month period. Our efforts remain consistent in supporting our immigrant communities. Equally, we take responsibility to ensure we make every effort to address the challenges our city faces with those committing crimes and repeat offenders harming our residents. Our mission is to safeguard lives and property to reduce fear and crime. Our commitment to all of you is that we will continue to address criminal violations and not any type of civil immigration violation. As depicted in the arrest summary of our federal task forces, the arrests depict the efforts to address violent crime affecting our residents. As already mentioned, more importantly, as I stress, is the violence of guns, human trafficking, narcotics and trafficking, and also as terrorism. We'll continue to work with our working group advocates on issues affecting trust of our undocumented residents. And as part of our community working group efforts, the department's made a few last strides in the last few years to update some policies relative to immigration. On September 2021, Special Order 16 amended the field interview card by removing the need to inquire a person's place of birth, unless required for consular notification or necessary for investigating a criminal offense. And this is part of the recommendations of our working groups that had provided input from the immigration advocates. On April 2022, Special Order 6 was amended, the law enforcement agency endorsement for immigrant victims of human trafficking and law enforcement certification for immigrant victims of serious crimes against persons. Additionally, last year, the department added a link to the LAPD online section entitled Get Service, providing the public information for undocumented residents as well in our LAPD online website. The FAQs, frequently asked questions, were updated in 2022 to include information to our undocumented residents, to include in Spanish language as well. Lastly, our department does not document, track, or give any information to immigrant authorities related to anyone's immigration status. However, I will point out it's important for residents to understand that if an individual is arrested for a crime, they are fingerprinted. Through the decentralized automated booking system and they are automatically entered into the National Crime Information Center, NCIC, which is accessible to local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies. And this entry is based not on civil immigration status, but it's based on a criminal arrest. We'll continue to ensure department efforts support our communities with the lens of public safety and constitutional law. Lastly, in addition to this report shared with our advocates that are listening in, we're also having a Spanish community forum this Wednesday between 4 and 6 at Universal Church to address this important topic of immigration as well as public safety within our communities. Thank you, Commissioners, for your time in public and available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Chief. Chief, I want to say thank you for the report. It was well received. I applaud the department's position on non-compliance with requests from ICE. I think you mentioned 780 for this past year alone. There is, however, an issue that is becoming a growing national concern, and that is on a national level, we have found ourselves victimized by certain individuals from countries in South America coming up on 90-day visas into our country for the sole purpose of operating professional burglary rings. Los Angeles, Orange County, Florida, Texas, New York, all have been victimized. Notwithstanding our immigration policies, it seems like you have task force built around this. Do you have any partner task force with federal agencies to help abate what is becoming increasingly a growing menace to a lot of communities in California?
Yes, Commissioner, good question. Thank you. And that obviously is a concerning factor of what's increasing our crime, not only with burglaries, but also some of the other violent crime affecting with our narco trafficking, and more importantly, our counterterrorism issues. So part of our task forces with commercial crimes and detective bureau are focused on some of those organized rings. I know our commercial crimes has been working various task forces with HSI investigations to address these rings and more importantly, target them. One of the issues that I'd like to also address for the community is our ability to address those individuals that have previously been deported as violent felons. We still have the ability to do that based on the Values Act. We didn't have any requests this year. We have had them in the past, but we do have a stringent policy in our department that if we do come across a previously deported violent felon, we have to verify that that crime is a violent felony based on the penal code. And once that's confirmed, that information is provided to me as the immigration liaison officer. I provide that information, and we do authorize a transfer to Immigration's Custom Enforcement if the individual was previously deported for a violent crime. So that's one of the other avenues that we have abilities to address those violent offenders. But our task forces do focus on those organized rings, and that's why it's important to continue those task forces. Having the ability to work transnational crimes is only an ability that we have with our federal partners. Our ability here at a local level would not reach those individuals that are traveling back and forth and committing crimes here in our city. So it is important, and more importantly, paramount, that we continue those task forces to support violent crime in our city.
Thank you, Chief Labrada. Commissioner Suthers.
Thank you, Chief, and I'd like to echo the compliment made by President Briggs regarding the efforts this year with the number of ICE requests, and the fact that 0 were honored is what we're certainly looking forward to. And I want to thank you for announcing the community outreach that's going to take place at the Universal Church. I think it would be very important to make these kinds of public forums and community engagement efforts known, and with a schedule that's got enough advance time so that people can actually be there. And this should be an ongoing effort. I'm sure that it is, but again, if we're going to educate the public, make them more aware, these kinds of forums are extremely valuable.
Absolutely, sir. And one of the other meetings we'll be hosting this afternoon is an organized meeting to discuss future meetings to address our Spanish community and other languages as well throughout the city.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Suthers. Commissioner Kalanche.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a comment and a follow-up question. Regarding the forums, something to think about is like maybe live streaming them, because I know that the Latino community many times cannot attend. There's transportation, there's work hours, the times that they're traveling, from one place to another on public transportation. So I've seen lots of different forums live stream. If we have a YouTube channel, it's not that difficult. Like, these are really critical information for the community, so just a recommendation. The follow-up regarding your presentation was just clarification on the fingerprinting, right? So you said if someone's arrested, they get fingerprinted, and then, so what type of arrest? Like, at what point would a DUI be would they be fingerprinted versus like an assault? Like, at what point do they get fingerprinted and put into this like criminal database?
Well, it'd be any custodial arrest. So if we physically take custody of the individual, it could be a drunk driving arrest. Now, obviously, citations, we wouldn't fingerprint unless we need to identify the individual. Also, release from field custody. So a lot of those situations, drunk in public, for instance, other misdemeanor charges and infractions would not be physical arrests and would not require a physical booking. But any criminal act, battery, you mentioned battery, that would require a physical booking, potential release, but it does enter that information into the NCIC system.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kalanche. There being no further questions, I move we approve the department's report. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. At this time, we're going to be in recess for closed session. Thank you.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item numbers 5A1 and 5A2 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
Lead out from closed session.
Item 5A1, officer involved shooting number 041-22. Commission on a 3-0 vote approved the recommendations of the Chief of Police, which were tactics, administrative disapproval, 2 police officer 2s, drawing and exhibiting in policy, 2 police officer 2s, lethal use of force in policy, 2 police officer 2s, round 1, out of policy, administrative disapproval, 1 police officer 2, round 2. Item 5A2, officer involved shooting animal, number 043-22. Commission on a 3-0 vote adopted the recommendations of the Chief of Police, which were tactics, tactical debrief, 1 police officer, 3, drawing and exhibiting in policy, 1 police officer, 3, lethal use of force in policy, 1 police officer, 3. That concludes the report out.
Thank you, Mr. Tiefank. There being no further business before the Board of Police Commissioners, I move that we adjourn. Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. See you next week.